Imagine, just for a second, a world where a simple paper cut could actually kill you,
Right.
or where a routine surgery, something we take for granted, like a C-section, a hip replacement, or even getting a wisdom tooth pulled, becomes a game of Russian roulette.
And not because of a surgeon's mistake.
Not at all. It's because the safety net we've relied on for, what, the last 80 years? It just vanishes.
It sounds like the plot of a dystopian novel, a zombie movie or something. But you're describing a very real and very current reality.
Yeah.
Epidemiologists are already calling it the silent pandemic.
Exactly. We are talking about superbugs. Bacteria that have evolved to basically, I don't know, laugh in the face of penicillin and all the other drugs we use every day.
They've learned our tricks.
They really have. And today, we're doing something a little different on this deep dive. We aren't just talking about the scary science of these bugs. We are looking at the business of fighting them.
And let me tell you, it is a messy, complicated, and incredibly high-stakes business.
We are going to unpack the story of a company that is fighting a two-front war. I mean, it's incredible. On one front, they're battling these microscopic superkillers. And on the other front, they're fighting their own balance sheet, which has been, let's be polite and say, distressed for a long, long time.
Distress is putting it mildly. They've been walking a tightrope over a canyon of debt for years.
That is the perfect setup. Today's deep dive is on Wockhardt Ltd. And depending on who you ask or which analyst report you read from this stack we have here, they are either a struggling generic drug maker burdened by bad decisions
And a ton of debt.
and a ton of debt, or they're the unsung heroes who might just hold the keys to solving the next global health crisis.
And the timing for this conversation is absolutely critical. It is February 2026. Wockhardt has just released their numbers for the third quarter of fiscal year 26. That's the quarter ending December 2025. And let me tell you, the market didn't just blink. It did a full double take.
We saw some numbers that honestly made my eyes pop out, a potential turnaround after years, literal years of struggle. But the question we have to answer over the next hour is simple. Is this real?
Is it a permanent fix?
Or is it just a dead cat bounce before the debt monster finally comes back to bite them?
That is the multi-billion rupee question. We are going to unpack how a relatively small player, tiny compared to the Pfizers and Mercks of the world, is trying to leverage a very specific technology advantage to survive.
So buckle up. We've got superbugs, we've got solvency issues, and we've got strategic pivots. Let's dive in.
Let's do it.
Okay, before we get into the high-stakes drama of antibiotic resistance and debt restructuring, we need to understand the beast itself.
Right.
When I was going through the source material, I kept trying to put Wockhardt in a box. Are they a generic company? Are they a biotech company? A hospital chain? It felt like they were trying to be everything at once.
That's a fair assessment. And it's one of their biggest challenges. If you look at the anatomy of the business, Wockhardt isn't just one thing. It's a complex mix, almost like a conglomerate of four distinct business pillars.
Core pillars.
And sometimes those pillars don't look like they belong to the same building.
Okay, so let's peel the onion. Pillar number one would be pharmaceuticals, the basic stuff.
Correct. This is the bread and butter, the engine room. They manufacture and sell branded generics and formulations. If you are in India or if you follow the Indian pharma market, you definitely know the brand Proxyvon.
That's their big pain management drug, right? Heard of that one.
It's a massive brand. It's a household name for pain relief in India. Then you have things like Wepox, which is erythropoietin, used for treating anemia, often in kidney disease patients.
So these are the pills and injectables that, keep the lights on.
Pretty much. They make the drug, they brand it, they sell it. It's the standard pharma business model.
Okay, so that's the legacy bucket.
Yeah.
But then there's this second pillar that sounds a bit more futuristic, biopharmaceuticals.
This is where they step up from standard chemical drugs. Biopharmaceuticals aren't just, mixed in a beaker. They're derived from biological sources, living cells.
So it's a lot more complex to manufacture.
Way more complex. And Wockhardt is actually a pioneer here, which people often forget because of all their recent financial trouble.
How so? What did they do?
They were the first manufacturer outside of the US and Europe to produce recombinant human insulin.
Wait, really? That's a huge claim to fame. You usually expect that kind of breakthrough from the giants in Switzerland or, New Jersey, not from a smaller Indian company.
Exactly. It requires a level of sophistication in manufacturing and R&D that most generic players just don't have. They have products like Glaritus and Welsulin, their insulin brands.
And you have to remember the context here. India is often called the diabetes capital of the world.
It is. The numbers are just staggering.
We'll definitely get to the scale of that epidemic later, but just having the domestic capability to make your own insulin, that seems like a massive strategic asset for the country and for them.
It is. It means they aren't just relying on importing it from Sanofi or Novo Nordisk. They own the technology. They control the supply chain.
Okay, so we've got generics, we got biotech. Then there's pillar number 3, which honestly threw me for a loop when I was reading up on this. Hospitals.
Yeah, this one is unique. It's not the typical model. They operate 6 super specialty tertiary care hospitals in India.
Is that common for a drug manufacturer to also run the hospital where the drugs are used?
It's not standard practice, no. I mean, on one hand, it gives them a certain level of vertical integration. They understand the patient journey intimately because they're literally treating the patient.
And get direct feedback.
Direct feedback, real-world data. But it also splits their focus and their capital. Running a hospital is a service business with high overheads. Making drugs is a manufacturing business. They require different DNA, different management styles.
Right. And finally, there's this fourth piece, contract manufacturing. This part fascinated me because it connects them to some major global events we all just lived through.
Absolutely. This is the hidden giant in their portfolio, especially their UK operations. They don't just manufacture for themselves. They have these massive, high-quality facilities, and they manufacture for others.
And the big example was?
The prime example from the sources is the fill-finish contract they had with the UK government for COVID-19 vaccines.
Fill-finish. That's basically taking the raw vaccine substance from, say, AstraZeneca and putting it into the millions of tiny vials.
Right.
Sealing it, labeling it.
It sounds simple, but it's an incredibly high-precision, sterile process. If you mess it up, the entire batch of vaccine is useless or, even worse, dangerous.
And the UK government trusted them with that.
During a national emergency. That tells you a lot about their quality standards and their manufacturing capabilities, especially at that UK plant. They also had agreements regarding the Sputnik vaccine.
So let's recap. We've got basic generics, advanced biotech, hospitals, and high-end contract manufacturing. That sounds like a massive operation.
It does.
But when I was looking at the market data in our sources, I got a bit of a reality check on their actual size compared to the rest of the industry.
It's so important to have that perspective. The global pharmaceutical total addressable market, the TAM, is estimated at around $1.5 to $1.6 trillion for 2025.
Trillion. With a T. That is just an ocean of money.
It's an unbelievably large number. Now compare that to Wockhardt. Their revenue is roughly in the ballpark of, say, 4,000 to 4,500 crore rupees annualized.
And in dollars, that's what, about 500 million?
Something like that. It puts them at less than 0.2% of the global market.
Wow. Okay. So calling them a small player is almost an understatement. It's a rounding error on a global scale.
Think of it this way. If the pharma market is a massive ocean liner like the Titanic or the Queen Mary, Wockhardt is a small, specialized speedboat.
A speedboat. I like that analogy. It's nimble.
It's crucial because when you're a speedboat, you can't just ram into the ocean liner. You'll get crushed. You can't rely on crushing the competition with sheer bulk or marketing spend.
You have to be smarter.
You have to be faster, smarter, and you have to find a specific current, a niche, and ride it perfectly.
And interestingly, their Mac doesn't look like what I expected for an Indian pharma company. You'd think India is their biggest market, right?
You would think so, but no. Europe is actually their largest market, largely thanks to that UK manufacturing presence.
Really?
Yeah, India and the USA follow that. And they have a presence in emerging markets, Latin America, the CIS region, Africa, the Middle East. They are truly global, but because they are small, they're spread thin.
It's a global speedboat.
Yeah.
But let's talk about where they are steering this boat. Because the standard generics market, making cheap copies of ibuprofen or statins, that's a brutal, low-margin game. It's a race to the bottom.
It is a bloodbath.
Right.
And Wockhardt seems to be realizing they can't win that war. They are betting the farm on something else entirely.
And this brings us to the why of this whole deep dive. The opportunity they are chasing is born out of two massive macro trends.
Right. If you want to understand their strategy, why they're taking these huge risks, you have to understand the world they're operating in.
Okay, let's hit the first one, the more predictable one. Demographics.
It's the story of the century, really. Global populations are aging. As people age, they don't just get gray hair, they get chronic diseases.
Diabetes, heart disease, arthritis.
All of it. We mentioned diabetes earlier. The global TAM for diabetes care is somewhere between 80 and $100 billion.
And in India, what are the numbers there?
In India alone, the prevalence is between 11 and 15% of the adult population. That translates to somewhere between 77 and 100 million cases.
Wait. 100 million people. That is a staggering number. That's a third of the entire U.S. population, just with diabetes in one country.
It is. It's a public health crisis. And for a company like Wockhardt, that drives a constant, non-negotiable demand for their insulin portfolio.
It's not a discretionary purchase.
Not at all. You can cut back on buying new clothes, but you cannot cut back on taking your insulin. It's life or death.
So that's their steady base. A difficult reality, but a reliable business driver.
Yeah.
But while diabetes is a driver, the second trend is the one that offers the explosive, company-changing potential.
Right.
It's the crisis we started with. Antimicrobial resistance, or AMR.
The superbugs.
Let's get technical for a second, but let's keep it simple. What is actually happening here? Why are our drugs just stopping?
Think of bacteria as biological learning machines. They reproduce incredibly quickly. When you hit an infection with an antibiotic, say penicillin, you kill 99.9% of them.
Okay, sounds good so far.
But maybe one or two bacteria in that massive population have a random mutation that, just by chance, lets them survive the drug.
It's like evolution and fast forward.
Exactly. Now, because you've killed all their competitors, those resistant mutants have all the food and space to themselves, they multiply. And suddenly the whole infection is made of these mutant bacteria that penicillin can't touch.
And we've been overusing these drugs for 80 years. In humans, in agriculture. We've basically been running a global training camp for bacteria.
We have taught them well. And the data in our sources regarding India is chilling. There's a specific resistance mechanism called ESBL.
Extended spectrum beta-lactamase. I practice saying that one.
Very good. Basically, it's an enzyme the bacteria produce that chews up some of our most common antibiotics before they can even work.
So it's like a little Pac-Man.
It is.
Yeah.
And in India, for certain urinary tract infections, the prevalence of these ESBL-producing bacteria is over 50%.
Hold on, let me just unpack that. You're telling me that if I get a urinary tract infection in India, which is a very common thing, there's a coin flip chance that the standard antibiotics just won't work.
Precisely. The standard drugs fail, the infection then climbs to the kidneys, then it can get into the blood. That's called sepsis. And at that point, doctors are running out of options.
This creates a desperate need for novel antibiotics.
A whole new class of weapons.
And this is where Wockhardt is placing its biggest bet. They aren't just making generic copies of old drugs. They are inventing new molecules from scratch.
Correct. They have a pipeline of drugs specifically targeting these resistant bacteria. The stars of the show are two drugs, Zainich, which is also known by its code WCK5222, and Mikoff, or nifipramicin.
I love that name, Zainich. It sounds like a superhero. And according to the clinical trial data, it kind of is. I saw a comparison in the notes about their anti-MRSA pipeline.
Yes, this is critical. In phase 3 trials, that's the final hurdle before you can ask for approval, their treatment showed a 93% cure rate.
Okay, 93%. And the standard treatment that they compared it to.
The standard comparator, a powerful last resort drug called meropenem, showed a 92% cure rate.
All right, I have to be the skeptic here. 93% versus 92%. That sounds marginally better. Is that really a big deal? Why would a hospital switch its entire protocol for a 1% improvement?
That is exactly the right question to ask. And on the surface, you're right, it doesn't sound like a revolution. In the world of clinical trials, showing superiority or even just non-inferiority against a strong standard is a huge win. But the context matters more here.
What's the context?
Meropenem is an older drug. Resistance to it is growing every single day. Wockhardt's drugs are designed to work when drugs like meropenem fail.
Ah, I see. So that 93% cure rate isn't just an average. It includes patients for whom the old drug would have had zero chance of working.
Exactly. It's not about being 1% better on average. It's about being 100% effective when the alternative is 0% effective. That 93% is a lifeline for patients who literally have no other option left.
That makes a huge difference. But here's the catch, and this is why Wockhardt is so unique and maybe so crazy. Developing new antibiotics is a terrible business model.
It is the absolute worst.
Why? I don't get it. Everyone needs them. If I'm dying of sepsis, I'll pay anything. The demand is infinite.
You will, but you only take the antibiotic for a week, maybe 2. Now, compare that to a heart medication or insulin, which you take every single day for the rest of your life.
Right. It's the subscription model versus the one-off sale.
Exactly. And because of that, Big pharma, the Pfizers, the GlaxoSmithKlines, the Sanofis, they largely abandoned antibiotic research years ago. The return on investment just wasn't there. It costs $1 billion to develop a drug, and they couldn't see a way to make that money back.
But it gets even worse, right? There's another paradox.
There is. If you invent a fantastic new antibiotic like Zanich, doctors actually try not to use it.
What? Why would they do that?
It's called antimicrobial stewardship. They want to save it, preserve its effectiveness. If they start using it for every little infection, the bacteria will learn to resist it too.
So they put it on the shelf, behind glass, with a sign that says, break in case of apocalypse.
That's a perfect way to put it. They only break the glass in an absolute emergency. So imagine you spend $1 billion inventing a product that everyone agrees is essential for humanity, but their goal is to keep it on the shelf and not sell it.
That is a fascinating and completely broken economic paradox. You create value by existing, not by being sold.
Right. So Wockhardt is zigging while everyone else has zagged out of the building. They are staying in a market that the giants have left. They are betting that the AMR crisis will become so acute that the market dynamics, the pricing, the government policies, all of it will have to shift.
They are building the weapons for a war that everyone else is ignoring. That is bold. But boldness costs money. R&D isn't free.
Not at all.
And Wockhardt hasn't exactly been swimming in cash.
No, they have not. Which makes this next part, their recent performance, so interesting.
Let's look at the present. It's February 2026. The Q3 numbers for fiscal year 26 are out, and something surprising happened.
Surprising is the right word. Let's look at the headline numbers from the reports. For the quarter ending December 2025, their consolidated revenue was 888 crore rupees.
Which is up 23.2% year over year.
Solid growth. Very respectable.
Right, but revenue is just the top line. That's the glamour stat. What about the bottom line?
That's where the real shock was. Consolidated net profit surged 205% year over year to 61 crore rupees.
Whoa, hold on. Say that again. 205%.
205%. And it gets crazier. If you look at profit before tax, or PBT, it exploded by over 1,300% compared to the average of the prior 4 quarters.
Okay, stop. We have to pause and unpack this. My brain doesn't compute. How does a 23% increase in sales lead to a 205% or a 1,300% increase in profit? That math doesn't feel intuitive at all.
It's a concept called operating leverage, and it is the holy grail for manufacturing businesses like pharma.
Break it down for me, like I'm 5.
Okay.
All right.
Think about Wockhardt's cost structure. They have huge fixed costs. They have to pay for the factories, the land, the machinery, the R&D scientists, the electricity, the regulatory compliance.
Right. All that stuff costs the same whether they sell 1 pill or 1 million pills.
Exactly. Those bills come every single month no matter what. So let's say their break-even point is selling 700 crore rupees worth of drugs in a quarter. Every rupee they earn up to 700 crore just goes to paying those fixed bills. They make zero profit. But once they cross that 700 crore line, once they've covered all those fixed costs, almost every extra rupee of sales falls straight to the bottom line as pure profit.
I see. Because the costs are already paid for?
Yeah.
The machinery is running anyway? The scientist is getting their salary anyway?
Precisely. So because their revenue jumped from somewhere near break-even to 888 crore, all that extra money above their cost base wasn't eaten up by new overhead. It went straight into the profit bucket. That's why a small bump in revenue can lead to a massive, massive explosion in profit. Operating leverage is incredibly powerful.
So where did this extra growth come from? Was it just selling more of that painkiller, Proxivon?
No, it was much more strategic than that. The data shows it came from their high-margin businesses. The biotech division was up 96% quarter over quarter.
96%. It basically doubled in 3 months. That's wild.
It is. The emerging markets business was up 48% year over year, and their UK business, that contract manufacturing hub, grew a solid 15%.
But there's another layer to this profit story, right? It wasn't just about selling more. The report said it was about selling better.
That's the key insight. Wockhardt made a very distinct and very painful strategic pivot. They finally decided to exit the U.S. generics business.
Wait, they left the U.S. market, the biggest healthcare market in the entire world. That sounds completely counterintuitive.
It does, until you look at the margins. The U.S. generics market is a total bloodbath. Prices are constantly being pushed down by insurance companies and pharmacy benefit managers. It's a volume game. You have to sell tons and tons of cheap pills for tiny, tiny profits.
And Wockhardt couldn't compete.
They couldn't win that game against giants like Sun Pharma or Dr. Reddy's. They were likely losing money on every single pill they sold there. It was dragging the whole company down.
So they just cut the dead weight.
Exactly. They got out. They actually booked a 97 crore rupee gain from that strategic exit in their accounting. So they shifted their focus from volume selling cheap stuff in the US to value selling high-margin biotech products and preparing for these novel antibiotics.
They sacrifice revenue size for profitability quality.
A textbook strategic pivot. Less is more, or in this case, better is more.
And looking at Q3 FY26, it seems to be working.
So far.
So far. But, and you knew there was a but coming with Wockhardt, we cannot let the champagne corks fly just yet.
I knew it. Here comes the wet blanket. You were letting me get too excited about the 200% profit growth.
I have to be the voice of reason here, because if you look just below the surface of these shiny profit numbers, there are some very, very dark clouds gathering.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room, and I mean a really big elephant. The debt.
It's a mammoth. The latest figures put their total debt at roughly 23.2 billion rupees.
Yikes. That's a lot for a company with this revenue base.
It is, and what's more concerning to analysts is the liquidity crunch. We have to look at their current liabilities versus their current liquid assets.
The bills they have to pay soon versus cash they have on hand.
Exactly. They have liabilities of 36.6 billion rupees. But their liquid assets cash, things they can sell quickly, are only about 15.14 billion. That doesn't add up. There's a 21 billion rupee shortfall there. How do you even operate like that?
That is the fundamental tension at the heart of this company. They are servicing this massive debt pile, while operationally, over the last 2 years, they have been burning cash.
Wait, explain that to me. We just said they made a 61 crore profit. How are they burning cash if they are profitable? This is where it gets confusing.
This is a crucial distinction for anyone looking at a company's health. Profit is an accounting term. It's on the P&L statement. It includes things like invoices you've sent out but haven't actually been paid for yet.
Okay, so it's theoretical money in a way.
You can think of it that way. Cash flow, on the other hand, is actual real money hitting the bank account. You can show a profit on paper because you sold a bunch of goods, but if the customer hasn't paid you yet, you have no cash. Or, and this is the big one for Wockhardt, if you have to spend a fortune paying back interest on your loans every month, your cash disappears before you can even count it.
So the debt payments are just eating the cash before it can be used for R&D or anything else?
Exactly. The reports show Wockhardt has had negative free cash flow recently. If this persists, they might need to raise more money, which means diluting existing shareholders. Or they might have to sell off more assets.
So even though Q3 was profitable, they are still bleeding.
Cash is oxygen for a business. If you run out of cash, it doesn't matter how profitable you are on paper. You go bankrupt.
So they are basically holding their breath, hoping this new strategy pays off before the oxygen runs out.
A perfect analogy.
And this brings us to the execution risk. Because everything, and I mean everything, hinges on these new drugs like Zainich getting to market.
It's the Hail Mary pass. Imagine this scenario. They have spent years and hundreds of millions of dollars developing Zainich. They have this huge debt pile looming over them. What happens if the FDA says no, or requests another expensive 2-year trial?
Beam over.
It would be catastrophic. They would have wasted all that R&D money and would have no new revenue to pay back that debt. And right now, the stock is trading at a premium to its intrinsic value. The market is pricing in success.
So investors are betting that the drug works and gets approved. If it fails, the stock could crash.
Precisely. The fundamental analysis in some of these reports actually rates them poor for long-term investment based on the historical numbers alone. They have a negative EPS earnings per share over the trailing 12 months, despite this one good quarter.
So the market isn't trading on the reality of today. It's trading on the hope of tomorrow. The hope that the superbug drug is the golden ticket.
It's a classic high-risk, high-reward story. It's a venture capital bet disguised as a publicly traded company stock.
Let's talk about the people making these high-stakes bets. Who is at the helm of this speedboat? Who is steering it through these stormy waters?
Wockhardt is very much a family affair. It has been from the start. It is led by the patriarch, Dr. Habil Karakiwala.
And he's not a young tech founder in a hoodie, I take it.
Far, far from it. He is 82 years old, and he has led this company for 60 years.
60 years. That is incredible longevity. He's seen the entire evolution of the modern Indian pharma industry from the very beginning.
He has, and he's not just a businessman, he's a scientist at his core. He has a master's in pharmaceutical science from Purdue University in the US, In fact, a little bit of trivia, he was the first non-American in 125 years to get an honorary doctorate from their prestigious pharmacy school.
Okay, so that gives him serious credibility. He understands the science. He isn't just looking at spreadsheets and profit margins.
He does. But now, at 82, the torch is being passed. His sons, Dr. Murtaza and Dr. Huzaifa, are running the day-to-day show as managing director and executive director.
And the board?
Heavily dominated by the family.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing for an investor?
Well, it's a classic double-edged sword. On one hand, you have skin in the game. The family owns a huge chunk of the company. If the ship sinks, they go down with it. They are motivated. They aren't going to engage in short-term thinking that hurts the company long-term.
That's the argument for it. What's the other hand?
On the other hand, it can lead to an echo chamber. Is there enough independent oversight? Are they listening to outside advice? One of the risk factors noted in the sources is a high turnover in directors. Over 20 former officers and directors are listed as having left the company over the years.
That's a lot of people walking out the door.
It is, and it makes you wonder, does that suggest some internal instability? Or is it hard for outside talent to thrive in a very strong family-dominated environment? It's a governance risk factor that investors need to be aware of.
And how are they handling the money they do have? I saw in the reports they raised some funds recently.
Yes, they did a QIP, a qualified institutional placement. They went to big investors and raised about 978 crore rupees.
That's a decent chunk of change. What are they doing with it? Blowing it on executive jets?
No, to their credit, they are being disciplined. Most of it is earmarked for two things: paying down that mountain of debt and funding the final stages of R&D for the new antibiotics.
So they're using the cash to buy more time, to keep the oxygen flowing while they wait for the drug approval.
Exactly. It's a survival move. But there is a small critique in the sources about their management compensation. The bonus percentage is relatively low, which usually suggests a weak link between executive pay and company performance.
But I guess if you're the family owner.
Right. Since the family owns so much stock, their real bonus is the stock price going up. If the stock doubles, they make way more than any salary bonus could ever provide. Their incentives are aligned with shareholders that way.
Right. That makes sense.
Very much so.
So we've got the turnaround quarter, the massive risks, and the family leadership. Let's look forward. Where does Wockhardt go from here? Beyond this one superbug drug, are there any other growth engines? Or is it literally Zaynich or bust?
There are a few other vectors. I wouldn't say it's completely binary, though Zaynich is definitely the main event. One vector is new geographies.
Expanding the map.
Right. They are making concerted efforts to expand into places like Thailand, Egypt, and Algeria.
I knew those places. Why not try to double down on Germany or France?
Those are highly regulated, highly competitive markets. These emerging markets are hungry for affordable, quality medicine. They are price sensitive, which fits the generic part of Wockhardt's business, but the volume is there and growing fast. It's a good defensive move to diversify their revenue streams.
Makes sense. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. And what about biosimilars? I keep hearing that buzzword everywhere.
Biosimilars are going to be huge for the next decade. Think of them like generics, but for complex biological drugs. Remember we said insulin is a biological drug made from living cells?
Yes, much harder to make than aspirin.
Much, much harder. So when the patents on those complex blockbuster drugs expire, you can't just make an exact copy, you make a biosimilar. It's like the difference between building a bicycle and building a jet engine.
Yeah.
You have to prove that your biological brew is similar enough in safety and efficacy to the original.
And Wockhardt has the expertise for that.
From their insulin work, yes, they have the technical chops. The reports say they have 11 filings or approvals in this space already. As more multi-billion-dollar biological drugs go off patent globally, this is a booming market for companies that can master the science.
So that's a solid plan B if the antibiotic thing takes longer than expected.
It helps. It provides another potential income stream. But let's be real. The story of Wockhardt for the next couple of years, the story the market is watching, really comes down to a binary outcome.
Give me the bull case. The everything goes right scenario. Paint the picture.
The bull case. Zaynich gets FDA and European approval. It works as well in the real world as it did in trials. It becomes the global standard of care for treating these deadly superbugs. Governments around the world, terrified of the next pandemic, start stockpiling it.
So sales will go through the roof.
Through the roof. Wockhardt's margins stay high because it's a novel, patented drug. The profit we saw in Q3 proves to be sustainable and grows from there. They pay off their debt, and the stock goes to the moon.
Okay, I like the bull case. Now give me the bear case.
The bear case is grim. The debt overwhelms them before the new drugs can pay off. The interest payments continue to eat up all their cash. Or a competitor comes out with a better antibiotic. Or the big generic giants like Cipla or Dr. Reddy's use their scale to crush them in the remaining markets they're in.
And they run out of runway.
They run out of runway, they can't raise more money, and they have to sell the company for scraps, or worse, go into bankruptcy.
It really, really is a high-wire act.
It is. It's one of the most fascinating corporate stories on the market right now because the stakes are so incredibly high, and not just for the shareholders. They're high for public health.
That's a great point to start wrapping up on. We've covered a lot of ground here. We've gone from what stands out to me, and the reason I wanted to do this deep dive, is just how rare this story is. Usually, small companies stay in their lane, they make generics, they try to get a little more efficient every year, they don't try to solve global health crises that big pharma has already given up on. It's almost heroic. Or maybe it's just reckless.
It's a very fine line between the two, and that's what makes it so gripping to watch. Strategic pivots look great on a consultant's PowerPoint slide, but in reality, they are messy, they are dangerous, and most of them fail.
And cash is oxygen.
Cash is oxygen. The next few quarters are absolutely critical. We need to see if this Q3 performance was a fluke or if they can breathe on their own without needing another fundraising round to keep them alive.
So to our listener, Wockhardt isn't just a stock ticker. It's a case study in risk, innovation, and survival.
Absolutely.
And here's my final thought, and it's something I really want you to mull over. We live in a world that is, frankly, terrified of the next pandemic. We are terrified of a new bug that we can't kill.
Right, we all just lived through it.
We did. Now, Wockhardt is one of the very few companies on the planet actually building the new weapons we might desperately need in 5 or 10 years. So here is the question. Is Wockhardt's true value found on its balance sheet, in its assets minus its liabilities? Or is its real value in the fact that it might be the only thing standing between us and a post-antibiotic apocalypse?
And if that's true.
And if that's true, does traditional valuation, does a PE ratio, does any of that even apply?
That is a very provocative thought. If the market prices them on today's cash flow, they look weak. If society prices them based on tomorrow's survival, they might just be priceless.
Something to think about. That's it for this deep dive into Wockhardt. We'll catch you on the next one.
Stay curious.